So I'm really excited to make this video today. It's a little bit different than what I normally do, but I'm gonna be sharing with you guys the top 10 things that I love most about living abroad. And if you're new here, hello, my name is Kolbye and I am a business coach for entrepreneurs, and I help entrepreneurs start and scale online businesses utilizing a personal brand in social media. So on my channel here, you normally are gonna find a lot of content surrounding entrepreneurship, building a business, marketing, all that things, but we also have a little sprinkle of digital nomad and travel lifestyle type videos here, just like this one. So don't forget to like and subscribe, as that helps us be able to create more content for you guys just like this. And as we dive into the top 10 things, if you're also someone who lives abroad or a digital nomad, or maybe you're wanting to live abroad, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below and tell me what your favorite thing about living abroad or traveling to other countries has been. Lastly, before we dive into my list of things, if you are wanting to figure out your next dream location for moving abroad or being a digital nomad, I also have a really great podcast episode here on my podcast, the Laptop Lifestyle Podcast, where I go over basically a whole showdown of some of the top digital nomad destinations, what I love about them, what I didn't love about them, and what my recommendations are. So I highly recommend checking that out, and we'll include the link below. So the number one thing that I love about living abroad is honestly just the feeling of the day-to-day feeling alive is the best way that I can describe it. And if you're someone who's lived abroad, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. But you really just feel alive and excited and stimulated, I think is the best word for this. And it's not just the exciting days where you're like hiking a new waterfall or you finally just got to a new country. It's honestly just living in a different environment that you're not used to. And so the day-to-day activities like going to the bank or going to the grocery store, they become exciting, they become interesting, they become something that you're not used to and just blindly going through. So this is both like a conscious and a subconscious thing, but literally it's exciting, right? Like when I go to the grocery store, I'm always practicing like how to say thank you, in whatever language of the country that I'm living in. And so that to me is very exciting and makes me feel alive. But it's also on a subconscious level that if you think about it, if you've lived in the same place for years and years and years, you can probably hop in your car and drive to the grocery store and drive back and like barely consciously process what is happening, right? You kind of just go through the motions. And this is quite literally something that happens in our brain. And this can be a positive thing that you actually save a lot of brain power when you do repeated actions, but it can also kind of turn into a negative thing just depending on what type of person you are, as far as you just kind of going through the day-to-day actions of life. And so this is honestly one of my favorite things about living abroad is I am just always stimulated and everything is always exciting. So the second thing I love about living abroad is a very literal thing, and it's food. Like I'm just gonna go ahead and get this one off the list here because I couldn't make one without it. It seems very simple, but like there is just so much good food in all the different countries that we get to live, and you actually get to try the cuisine and the different meals like from the place where they originated, from the place where they are made best. I think the other thing about food is there's so many different cuisines or like different types of meals and things that I wouldn't normally try if I just stayed where I'm from, which is America, even if I had the opportunity. So anytime that I'm in a Thai night market or I'm walking down the street in Vietnam and I see something, because I am in that place, I feel compelled to be like, yes, screw it, whatever, like let's try it. And so I find that when you're living abroad, you're a lot more open to trying new things and also just getting to enjoy the different types of cuisines. And that's like different types of coffees, cocktails, different types of food-based traditions, as food is such a big part of all of the different cultures. So the third thing that I love about living abroad is really just the variety and choice that you get to have surrounding your life. So this may be a little bit different if you're more of an expat and you've chosen one country to stay in, but at the end of the day, if you're someone going to move out of your home country, that's all a choice, right? And so what I love in particular about being a digital nomad lifestyle is I always get to pick and choose my environment. Want to live next to the mountains? Cool, let's move here. Want to move next to the beach? Cool, let's move here. And so you get to be really intentional about your environment, and you always get to choose. It's not just the beach or the mountains, but you get to choose the food that you're surrounded by, the people that you're surrounded by, maybe even the politics of a certain country that you want to surround yourself with and be a part of, like that culture and society. But as you start to have like this variety and choice and you're focusing on these things, you start to become a lot more in tune with, ooh, what do I value? Like, what do I really want? What do I want to be surrounded by? And also there's not so much pressure in finding the perfect home or the perfect city or the perfect environment. You really get to thrive through the different seasons of your life. If one time you want to live here in a much more active place, on a more tropical island, and you go into a new season of your life where you're ready to head to Europe and be in a more populated city for whatever reason that is, again, you get to really, if you're intentional about it, place yourself in the environment where you're going to thrive most always. So the fourth thing that I love about living abroad is really how much you change the way of thinking and change your perspectives. So this honestly happens whether you want it to or not, but by virtue of living in different countries, being surrounded by people who have grown up in cultures and with beliefs and values that are different from your own, you will, I guarantee it, change. Like from an identity level, you will start to see things differently. You will inherently just have different perspectives that will reflect and come through within your own life and how you start to operate. And to me, this is one of the coolest and most exciting things, is really just taking this attitude of being open to everything, being open to not just being who you were, but becoming and evolving to anything, right? And starting to question about who you want to become, what you want to believe. And again, just really being intentional. This is where the intentional part comes in, about learning about the places that you're living in, right? Learning about the religion, the culture, the history, talking to the people that live there, right? Because the people that live there, they have most likely grown up very differently from you. And so that really affects how you see work, how you see family, how you see all these different things. And to be honest, this is just one of the coolest things that you cannot get any other way other than by living and actually ingraining yourself in these other cultures and cities and societies and living abroad. So number 5 is definitely something that I can all of these things I feel like have made me a better person. But this one's a little bit funny in that you're honestly just like not bothered by as many things anymore. So most people that by nature probably move abroad or are living the digital nomad lifestyle are probably somewhat flexible. But I honestly even remember as far as how I used to react to situations in the beginning of moving abroad versus now, very, very differently. There's always things that are going to go wrong or that go unexpected because you are literally putting yourself in ever changing and brand new types of environments and situations. So there's just always something that like we can't predict or we didn't know happening. So for example, at this point in time, because we spend a lot of time in Southeast Asia, everything is open air. If there's an ant in my food, I'm like, if there's not a parking spot, who cares? You really start to refocus on different things of like, I'm way more excited about getting to this mountain or just focusing on driving in the country that I'm in and not having a parking spot, no big deal. You're constantly changing though and just focus on so many other things in your surroundings in your life when you're living in new countries that, again, back to my first point, like you're very stimulated in. So you will definitely find if you are living abroad that you become a lot less bothered by the little things in life. So the number 6 thing that I love about living abroad is that you end up really studying people, like human beings, just as an entity, and how people communicate. So depending on what countries you're living abroad in, you most likely won't speak the language that's natively spoken there. And so you really have to learn how to communicate. You have to learn kind of how to be a problem solver and get crafty in certain situations. So one thing that you end up inherently doing is kind of studying people, studying body language. And you also have to learn how to communicate back sometimes with someone that you cannot speak to. So you learn and you're so much more aware and affected by a smile, because neither of you can say what's on your mind, but you feel the energy from the other person. I know so many examples of times where we've been in places like Thailand or China that especially don't even use the same alphabet as we do in English, and we also have to start to recognize patterns. So by no means are we able to read the Thai language or read Chinese symbols or characters per se, but once we live in a place like that, because we're so in tune and because we kind of have to be to start to figure out our surroundings, we start to recognize, oh hey, I've seen that character symbol in certain places. I keep seeing it on the front of buildings, so maybe it means X, Y, and Z. So you learn to really infer both body language and signals from people as well as your surroundings. The 7th thing I love about living abroad is you honestly just realize how alike we all are as human beings. I think that especially if you're someone who hasn't traveled much less hasn't lived in another country, a lot of times it feels far away. It feels very different, right? It feels like, oh, those people, you know, Europeans, Australians, Americans, you know, Thai people, right? Like, it feels like all different. And in actuality, like, we are so all the same. When you're able to live in these other countries and watch someone go grab a coffee, go pull their crying child, you know, along as they're trying to eat at a restaurant, just smile at you and the things that they want, it's honestly just one of the coolest things to experience, especially when you're able to talk to people in different countries where you're living. For example, we were able to become really good friends with some local Vietnamese people in Da Nang while we were living in Da Nang, and I actually was able to interview some young women in their like early 20s. A lot of them were graduating university, and I was able to kind of interview them about them learning English and what they wanted to do with their lives. And it was just such a cool experience of like, you are literally just like me. You want big things, you have big dreams, and you want to, you know, have a really happy and fulfilled life.
I love English so much.
So thanks to English, I know more about the world.
I can find many work, many salary.
When I graduate, I wish I would be a personal assistant of a foreign boss.
Can become a resident of the world.
And so one of the things when you're living in other countries and moving abroad is you probably are there like either by yourself or maybe with a significant other, and you don't really know a lot of people. So in also recognizing, you know, how we are all so similar, you're kind of forced to interact with people on a deeper level because you don't know anyone, you don't have any friends. And so that also leads you to some of these findings. So number 8 is that you start to detach from things and your values and your priorities honestly really start to change. So I'll give you a couple examples of what I mean by this. One of them is a very specific example. So I lived in Texas for a couple of years and I love me some queso. It's Mexican food. It's always my first meal that I have whenever I come back to see family. And so when I first moved abroad, I used to always think about queso. I used to always think about, oh, I miss queso. Let's go try and find some. And every time that I would come back to the States and have that queso, it became less and less significant. It became less and less of what I built it up in my head to be. And eventually I really started to detach from it. I was like, yeah, I'd love to have some, but you know, it's fine. And so as you start to change your surroundings and as you start to begin to love and enjoy so many other things and also not be able to have those daily rituals and routines in your life, like having queso every single week or Mexican food readily available, you start to really detach. And this is actually meant in a positive way in that I am so much less attached to literally anything material, even a lot of nostalgic things, because I'm constantly exploring and filling that quote unquote void with new and exciting things. And also because we travel all the time, we're always living in these new countries, you know, our favorite pho place in Vietnam, we know we're going to go back to, right? So it becomes more of this, I'm not so attached to it, and more of this exciting memory to remember and also then to come back to. I think this is also a really strong point because I find that it's not just things, you know, like food, but to be honest, everything, like all material things. As someone who literally sold everything that I own, and especially being a digital nomad where I don't necessarily have another home base in another country, you become very detached to things. Your shirt, you know, spills coffee and now it's ruined. Oh well, like we'll buy a new one. We're going to need to anyways. And you just own so little. I find that in moving around and living abroad, we've also become very minimalist. And it's great. It's the most freeing, like liberating thing because again, you feel so detached from anything. It has a lot less power over you. And then again, moving into how your values and priorities change as you prioritize the experiences a lot more. You don't become so fixated on certain things happening certain ways or being able to find a certain mascara that you always buy, right? You're a lot more with the flow and just taking things in for what they are. And what you'll find through all of this happening is it's going to become a lot clearer of what you really value, of what means the most, of what makes you happiest. Because when you start to live in one place for so long and you accumulate all of these things and patterns and habits of the way that things have always been, when that breaks, you start to break for many people, right? And so you just become a lot more adaptable. And again, your values of what really is important become very highlighted. The ninth thing I love about living abroad is that you are always learning. You're always learning, and honestly, like, I'm always being curious about things. And curiosity is so, so important, especially also being an entrepreneur, because curiosity and just learning new things is what brings about those brilliant ideas and those new ways of shifting and thinking and looking at something. So, I mean, we are just always learning about we always try and learn a little bit of like the language we're going to, and that's always exciting. We're always just asking questions about, ooh, why do they do things this way? A really fun example of is in Taiwan. So when we lived in Taiwan, we live in Kaohsiung. You can actually check out a couple of our videos up here about Kaohsiung. And in Taiwan, they have musical trash trucks that come by on certain days of the week, and you have to like listen for the music coming by. It's like an ice cream truck, and like run outside and give them your trash, and they're these little bags because they come very often. And it's just so interesting, things like that we then started to dig into and learn. We learn more about the culture and the way that the people do things. And so you're just always stimulated and learning and getting curious about the world around you. And the last thing I love most about living abroad is the day-to-day life rather than the big moments, rather than the weekend. So what I mean by this is when you get to choose the environment that you're living in, and when you're stimulated and living in all these new places, to be honest, it's not necessarily the big weekend trip where I took this, snorkeling trip or hiked up to this waterfall that's the things that are most exciting to me. And to be honest, that's also not your norm every single weekend. The thing I love most about living abroad is simply the day-to-day. It's 1 month I get to walk down cobblestone streets on these ancient cities in a town in Europe, just to go get my normal coffee, and I get to do it every day, not just for an exciting vacation or a weekend. And then another week I get to ride my bike, and it's just those moments of like riding your bike through the rice fields in Bali or Vietnam every single day on your way to a coffee shop just to go work in the morning. It's those moments that are truly just my favorite. That's it. They're just my favorite part about living abroad, not always the big, like, glamorous, fun vacations. So I'd love to hear from you. Comment below and tell me, especially if you're someone who's lived abroad or a digital nomad, what is your favorite thing about living abroad? Or which one of the things that I mentioned from above really resonated with you most? And if you're someone who's watching this video and you're not yet living abroad, but you're someone that is looking to move abroad, become a digital nomad, and start your own business to be able to fuel and support that lifestyle, and you're kind of trying to figure out how to get started, check out the resource below. I actually have a 30-day guide that's going to help you be able to start your own online business. And also I have a signature program, Laptop Lifestyle Bootcamp, that has become the #1 go-to program for service-based entrepreneurs to help you be able to start and launch your own online business and learn everything from A to Z that you're going to need to know to get up and running and be able to live this digital nomad lifestyle successfully. So don't forget to like and subscribe if you like this video. We've got lots more coming your way. You can also check out some of the other videos here about all things entrepreneurship, building an online business, and the digital nomad lifestyle. And I will see you guys in the next video.